Let's take a look at how we build or design our construction template. A construction template is made up of basically two parts. The carcass, how it's joined together, how it mates to each other's parts, as well as the parts that are inside the carcass. Let's start off with the basic cabinet. So ignoring the partitions and the shelves, we're looking at the ends, how they mate to the bottom, to the top, to the back, etc. And the way that templates are designed in CabinetSense, we can specify how our finished end mates with its parts and how an unfinished end mates with its parts. So the first thing we do is we look at the construction, how the parts mate to each other. The end overlaps the back overlaps the bottom, and so you would set up your template in the manner that you were building your cabinets. Once you've designed that, you're going to go through each part, and in this cabinet I have an unfinished end on the left and a finished end on the right, and the finished end is designated by our millwork material. So what I've done is, if you looked at the right end, I've changed the material to millwork. Everything else still uses the carcass. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through each part and assign our machining. Looking at the back stretcher, I'm using conformats all the way around. So let's change that. And on a finished end, we're going to use dowels. And we'll go through all the parts that mate and make the same kind of changes. Also, as we're going through each part, we can set up our banding. Okay, so we'll also take a look at our shelf, because on a fixed shelf, we would want to use the doweling again. So in our example, what we've done is that our carcass is using doweling techniques when joining to a finished end, and conformat techniques when we're using joining to an unfinished end. And then we can test out and take a look at our preview, and you can see the holes for our conformats. And I've got conformats going all the way around, even on the partitions. But on the fixed, there's nothing visible. If I turn on X-ray mode, there are the holes for the dowels. So in this case, we're pretty comfortable that we've machined it correctly. You can set up your machining on your partitions. And so I have it all set up as conformats. Here we have an adjustable shelf, and it will it'll take the banding, it will also look at machining, etc., etc., machining templates when you do your copy. Let's just go back to the very start, which is their doors and drawer fronts. And all that the template uses from the doors and drawer fronts is the reveal information. So taking a look at our top, and in this case, this is one level too deep. This is a drawer, but I could have used two doors or two drawers. It doesn't really matter. The important thing is use two, and I'll show you why. So when we're at the top of the cabinet, I am using a 3mm reveal. Now I'm going to change that to 8mm. On our unfinished end, we're using a 1.5mm reveal and a 3mm reveal when we use a finished end. I have no bottom reveal when I am joining two cabinets or two parts together vertically. There is a gap, but the gap is all specified on the second or on the bottom part. And I could change this and do it whichever way. I could split it in half if I wanted to. Okay, there's our 8mm on the top. Now, for our bottom, we've got the same: left 1.5mm, right 3mm. Our top is 3mm to give us the gap. And again, I've got a bottom here of 0 millimeters, meaning I'm flush to the bottom of the cabinet. So I'm going to say this is my standard. The important thing is as well for horizontal gaps. So if I had let's say two doors, I can specify what my gap is here as well. And the template will look at that too. So our door gap is set at 3 millimeters. So in both of, even though you only have one door shown, it's still important to put your door gap properly so CabinetSense knows how to gap them for you. And the same thing goes for the door. Our door gap is set at 3 as well. So it doesn't matter if you use doors or drawers, it has to be functional, and if you built this cabinet, it had to be right, whether you put one door on it or two doors or etc. Okay, so whatever you put inside the carcass is what gets copied onto your actual cabinets. So if I didn't want to have any control over my partitions, so i.e. any cabinet I brought in, just use the partition from the cabinet, and I didn't want to impose any structure from my template, I could simply get rid of my partition. If I got rid of my shelf, then again, the shelf information isn't in the template and it can't get copied to your subsequent cabinets. Same with the doors, same with the adjustable shelf. So you could theoretically just have the carcass, and everything else inside the cabinet is governed by each individual cabinet. So let's take a look at what this looks like. I'm going to bring in a cabinet, and it's found that there is a template, so now it's asking you, what parts do you want me to copy? And again, I talked about the construction. The construction means how the carcass mates, how the parts overlap each other, and what kind of machining instructions I use to join the parts, as well as the edge banding. That constitutes construction. Other than that, do I want to copy the machining template attribute from the cabinet? Do I want to copy the dado det, the inset back property, the inset top property, the material property? So all of these are from the cabinet. In addition, I can copy the grain direction from the part. I can copy the machining template from each individual part, and I can copy the material from each individual part, as well as the reveals. And I can turn any one of these on or off. I'm just going to accept all my defaults. And CabinetSense has now applied the template information to this cabinet. And if we remember, we have doweling, a technique or joinery used for finished ends. So I should find that I have dowels on both of these parts, and the back being conformats. And here we go. The back is using a conformat, the left and right are using dowels. If I go into this cabinet and change any of the ends, so let's say I go in and I say, well, I want the right end to be unfinished. Just by making that change, the template kicks in and looking at the template says, oh, I'm changing to an unfinished end. What other things do I need to do to make this a correct change? Now if we look at the part, it's now using a conformat on the right. So it's again obeying what the template is telling us. So as I mentioned to you, the inside, what's contained inside the template, the shelves, the reveals, etc., will be copied to the template. Now, there may be situations where I don't want a certain interior part to be changed. And I can do that. Whoops. by going to the interior part, and down at the bottom in the other section, there's an attribute that can allow or disallow processing of the template. So if I go into here and say, do not process, then any information, this is an adjustable shelf, any information from the adjustable shelf in the template will not be copied over. And I can do the same thing with all the other interior parts. If I decided that I did not want my door to be inflected with the reveals from the template, we have the allow disallow processing of the construction template. So different ways that you can use the template. You can put the parts inside of it or not, and if you do put the parts inside the template, you can override them in the actual cabinet saying, I don't want you to change me. That's basically it on construction templates. Just one in summary, good design would have a finished end and an unfinished end and all the joinery, and that's the basics of where the minimum is for a template.